Hey, yo everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video. And today we're going to be doing another edition of What I Am Thinking. Now for those of you new to my channel, or it has been a while, basically what this video series is I sit down and I talk with you guys about what I am thinking. Mainly in the comic book world. And it can be about anything in comics. It can be about Superman wearing his underwear outside of his pants again. Or the new Justice League lineup coming out of DC Meadow, my thoughts on it. Or it could be about the fact that I am a tremendous DC fan, and even I think the new Deadpool trailer looks amazing. Whatever it may be, I sit down and I give you guys unfiltered information about my feelings on a particular subject. And these are very biased and opinions feelings. I'm not trying to be neutral in the arguments, or I'm not trying to at all be, how should I say, nice or fair. I give you guys straightforward my thoughts on a particular topic. Now, before we get into today's topic, as always, if you would like to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, go right down below. My handles are down there, as well as if you would like to support the channel, my Patreon is also down there. So, without any further ado, let's talk about what I am thinking. You know, the big thing that's going on right now, unless you've been living under a rug, all of you should know that Batman is getting married. To Catwoman, nonetheless. Finally, after 75 plus years of being a comic book character, he's going to settle down and tie the knot. And for a fan like me, this is amazing. This is something that I've always wanted for Batman for the longest time. And I'll go into the reasons for that a bit later. But some fans aren't that too keen on it. And it's always kind of a big topic and debate in comic book world about marriage. Whether or not it should happen in comic books or it shouldn't. Or if it can even last in comic books, because, well, let's face it, comic books is a completely different medium than any other kind of storytelling, right? You have a television show, that television show can last, 5, 7, 10 years, but at the end of the day, it's eventually going to end. Unless you're Dragon Ball Z, then, that keeps going, which is a good thing. Same thing with books. Books can continue going for a certain amount of time, but even them, they have an end. Movies only have a couple hours to tell a story. Even if there's sequels, right? You only get so much story time out on movies. So, in theory, yeah, it's easy to tell a love story or tell a story about two people coming together in those mediums because, well, they eventually end. Even my D&D campaigns, which are 10, 12 years running, 12 years. Eventually, those characters come to an end and we move on to new ones. But comic books are a bit different. No, the characters always reset in a certain sense of way. They have what is called a floating timeline, where the characters never age. They really never get old. There are some progressions in age, like Dick Grayson going from a teenage superhero to being a young adult vigilante. That makes sense, like Robin to Nightwing, get it. But Batman is perpetually always in his 30s. Right? Either his early, mid, or late 30s, depending on who you talk to. Same thing with Superman. The same thing with Wonder Woman. The ages never really change. So you never see that progression of Batman becoming a grizzly old man in the main continuity. Yeah, you'll see it in Elseworld stories like Legends of the Dark Knight, but he's always going to be the same age in the mainstream DC universe. Same thing goes for any other character. Peter Parker. Yeah, he was 15 when it started off in the comics, but he hasn't really gone past 25 at all in the comic sense. I'm not a big Marvel fan, so if I get the ages messed up, I'm sorry. My bad. But that's just the case. It's a floating timeline, right? The characters perpetually stay the same age. Superman has been in his 30s for the past 75 years. 80 years now. We're reaching Action 1000. But a lot of people think, well, if these characters are never aging and their stories are never finished, why would we want to settle them down with other characters? Why would we want them to get married? And I'm going to address a couple of the arguments against marriage in comic books, because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm firmly on the side of characters getting married in comics. And I'll go into my opinions on that later. But there's two arguments that I've heard from people about comic book characters getting married and whether or not it should work and probably wouldn't, right? One of the big arguments is, well, no one can relate to them. Right? Because they're married. And you can't really relate to characters that are married. Right? This is surprisingly an argument I've heard a lot from people. And not just people, but the comic book industry has even thrown out there. Apparently, eligible bachelor and bachelorettes are more relatable than married couples. I don't see that, and this is why. Maybe back in the 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, when the majority of comic book readers were, youths or teenagers, I could understand that because it was a younger audience. But since the 90s onwards, comic book readers are in their late teens to their adulthood. Many of the I don't know the numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if the average comic book reader is in their 20s to 30s, like me. I can relate to someone that's married because I am married, right? I think using the argument that it's hard to relate to a character that is married is just not a good thing to use because, well, like I said, many of the comic book readers right now are, in fact, indeed married or in a relationship or committed to someone. There are some people out there that doesn't mean every comic book character needs to get married. I'd be perfectly fine if Hal Jordan stayed an eligible bachelor the whole time. But that doesn't mean that Batman or Superman can't be married in a long-term relationship. Second argument that I've heard a lot of is, well, if we marry them, it limits the kind of stories we can tell. We can't tell those love stories anymore. This argument just blows me away on why anyone would say it. Because, in fact, you are, limiting the stories that people will actually commit to. In the time that I've been reading Batman, with the exception of Catwoman stories, I don't even really give a shit about any of his love interests. Because for me, I feel as though they're never going to go anywhere. As much as I like Silver St. Cloud, I never committed to them actually being in a long-term relationship. Right? Vicky Vale, any of the characters that he's dated, I just feel as though they weren't going to go anywhere. The characters were going to either die, they're going to break up, or they're going to find out the truth about Bruce Wayne, and they're going to be like, oh no, he's the Batman, and they just don't care. Whatever the reason may be, if the character never has a long-term relationship, there is no value to any other relationship that I see. Because at the end of the day, it's just going to end. At least that's in my opinion. Hey. And not just that, if a character is married, you are opening the doors to thousands of possible stories, right? You can still tell stories with other characters about them being single, but now that the character is married, you can tell stories about them being married. Stories between couples that are in relationships or who are married are compelling stories. Superman in the past, I want to say 3 or 4 years, at least since Rebirth has happened, has been a lot more compelling of a book. It's one of the few characters I felt as though the New 52 handled wrong, because they took away that essential part to Superman, which was his marriage. Him and Lois Lane were the golden standard for a comic book relationship. And since they brought it back, the stories have been fantastic. And they've been balancing Superman and Lois Lane as characters in the stories, right? It's not all about love and romance. It's about them being a couple and being partners with each other in life. And that's what marriage is two people being partners, couples, in love, working together as a team. Ironically, to save the world if you live in Metropolis, but that's neither here nor there. So these are the two major arguments that I always see when it comes down to comic book marriage, but I just don't feel it. Because, look at it this way, I can see certain characters being perfect for marriage. Batman, Superman, Flash, Spider-Man. These characters work well having a relationship. And then you can have the characters as, listen, I'm cool if Dick Grayson stays an eligible bachelor for a long time, because he's a young 20-year-old individual. Not a lot of people are married in their early 20s. There are some, mind you, but a lot of times you're just leaving college, you're getting your feet wet, you're trying to figure out your life. That's great for Dick Grayson. It works for him as a character. It works for Nightwing because he's in that position in his life. Same thing with Barbara Gordon. I'm cool if Barbara Gordon is single because it works for the character. But where you have a character like Batman, who already has a kid, mind you, right? He has a child, so he's already a parent. There's no reason not to give him a relationship because he's in his 30s to 40s. It's where people like me can relate to him. So if the younger audience wants to relate to a character, please, this character that is still single. And if obviously me or the older readers want to relate to another character that has a relationship that's in a marriage, and then geez, you got the older characters there. And I think that works well for the characters in terms of how relationships should be played out. I always find that the main characters, the senior mentor figures, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, Aquaman, those people, I'm cool with them getting married. I think it works well for them getting married. And then I find the second generation, or the first generation of sidekicks, Donna Troy, Dick Grayson, Wally West, to a degree. Wally might be a different thing. Roy Harper. I think those characters work well as single, because they are out there living life of a young 20-year-old, right? Confused, not knowing where they're going, what they're doing. It makes sense that they're single, and they may even be a little bit more adventurous with their relationships, right? They are dating multiple people. They're trying to find themselves. They're trying to find what people work for them, right? I get it. I think those situations work well. So I'm a pure supporter of marriage in comics. Now, in particular, Batman getting married is a huge victory for me. And this is something that's been brewing in my heart for a long time, right? Because Batman is my favorite character in all fictional media, right? I'm going to do a top 10 hero video sometime, and it's going to be obvious Batman's going to be at the top. I grew up with Batman. He is my bread and butter whenever it comes to a fictional character, right? If I ever made a Justice League of fictional characters, you can be sure that he's on there, even if it makes no sense. If I was making a Dragon Ball Z team, Batman would be on it, even if it doesn't make sense. If I was going to make a Starship team on the USS Enterprise, Batman would be on there, even if it doesn't make sense, because I love Batman that much. But something that's always irked me is the fact that he never really settled down. And it really irked me because, and there's nothing wrong with people that don't settle down, right? I have friends that are happy being single, right? And they're happy being single in their 30s and in their 40s. That's just how they roll their life. That's fine. But for me, Batman's always sad. He's not okay with it. He wants to be happy. And, even the Batman Beyond universe, when he's grizzly, old, and depressed and broken, I find that to be sad. I don't want my favorite character to go down that route. But not just that, I'm a stoic believer in romance and love. I'm a hopeless romantic. But I believe in the institution of marriage, too. I am married, right? And I believe in what marriage brings to people, because marriage is something incredibly strong. And when you knowingly go into it, the power that it gives you as a couple to have that union with someone is amazing. My wife makes me better every day, right? And I hope I do the same for her in some capacity. And yes, there's ups and downs, right? There's going to be incredibly amazing times, right? And there's going to be rocky times too. But on a whole, I think marriage is a fantastic institute. Not for everyone, but for me, I want my favorite character to have that. So for Batman to get married, it's like nirvana for me. And so far, it looks like everything is going off with hitch. The solicits all seem like they get married. Catwoman's coming out with a new series that hints towards the fact that the marriage goes off. We've seen some preview pages of the actual ceremony, so they at least follow through with it, and hopefully they stick with it. But it works for Batman, right? He's been an eligible bachelor for almost 80 years. So there's no reason for him not to marry right now, especially seeing he has a kid. But him and Catwoman work so well. Right? They've always had a flirtatious relationship. In Earth 2, they were married, in both Earth 2s, right? And really, their relationship got revved up in Hush, when the door to their relationship got opened up, right? You had the Hush series, and then you had the Catwoman individual series. Then you've seen them in Batman Incorporated becoming a little bit more a couple. And although the New 52 changed things, there's a tweak, which were eventually undone in Rebirth, like her forgetting his identity, but it was undone in Rebirth. Them pushing their relationship even further in a physical sense, it just, the progression and building of their characters have been great. And in the past 40 plus issues of Tom King's run, he's really pushed the envelope with those characters. He's done a fantastic job. That rooftop story, beautiful, right? The proposal at the end of the War in Joker Riddles, one of my favorite proposals that's ever been done. I mean, Catwoman's answer to Batman is something that can be applied to life in general. It's such a fantastic ending. And just on a whole, I think the building of this relationship over the past 15 years, and it's been 15 years, since Hush 2003, roughly, right? It's 2018, 15 years. The building of this relationship, in a very subtle sense, makes this feel even more right. And I think it will only benefit the character even more, because the stories that we've been getting with Batman and Catwoman have been fantastic stories. And listen, it's not like Batman's comic is turning into Batman and Catwoman. It's still going to be Batman's comic. Catwoman's getting her own individual series. They're still going to be doing their thing. They're just going to be married. They're going to be showing up in each other's comic. And I could not be happier at all. I think it is the best maneuver. And it's worked out for other characters. Like Superman getting his relationship back with Lois Lane. Mind you, there were other things. But them getting the relationship back and having John Kent. People love Superman now. And the storytelling and everything that goes. And it's great to see him as a father. When I got to meet Tom King and when I got to meet Peter Tomasi, right, at Boston Comic Con last year, I said to Tom King, "Thank you for what you're doing." This was before we knew the answer to Catwoman, but I said, "Thank you for what you're doing," because for me, as a comic book fan and being a husband, to see my favorite character possibly get married, it's amazing, and the storytelling you're doing is great. And he said, "Oh, thank you very much." But then I went over to Peter Tomasi and I said, "Listen, the storytelling you've been doing with Batman and Robin, with John Kent and Superman and Lois Lane, like, it hits me so much, and more than some other comics, because I'm a father and I'm a husband, and those resonate with me, and you do such a great job with it." And he said, "Yeah, everyone's been feeling the same way. They love Superman being back with Lois and having a son." And it's true. It works out so well for these characters. So I am super happy that it's going on. But I'm curious to see what you guys think. Are you happy? Do you believe in marriage in comics after this, discussion that I've had with you guys? Do you think you'll change your mind on it? Do you think maybe like, hey, maybe it's okay with some characters, some major characters settling down with other characters? I'm really curious to what your opinions are. So please, by all means, comment down below, or like I said, hit me up on Twitter. I'm always active on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, that is my thoughts on marriage and comics, and more importantly, how stoked I am for Catwoman and Batman to get married. I am just salivating at getting that issue and watching it go down, because it's been something that I've been dreaming about for the longest time. So with that said, I'm going to end this video here. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.